I want to start this week by saying something that might turn off a couple of viewers. I'm not really sure how Bills fans will react to this declaration, this hot take, if you will, this opinion of mine. But Seahawks fans, if you're coming back to check on this week's video, spoiler alert, you're not going to like this. Cardinals fans, though, if you're here for the very first time, just checking out the channel, first of all, welcome. I suspect that you are here for the first time, given that the Bills and Cardinals only play each other once every 4 years. But secondly, I think you're going to like this. I think you're going to like what I have to say. So here it is. I hate Russell Wilson. I cannot stand Russell Wilson. Super Bowl winning quarterback, 2020 MVP frontrunner, future Hall of Famer. Probably a sure thing. Can't stand him. And it really doesn't have so much to do with how he plays on the field, although I can't imagine having been his offensive coordinator in the past, like Darrell Bevell, who is only going to be really remembered for not giving Marshawn Lynch the ball on the 1 yard line, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. Just creating a playbook, giving that playbook to Russell Wilson, calling the plays during the game, and he essentially just spits on it. And what do I mean by that? Because in years past, not so much this year, he's been a lot better about it the past 2 years. Maybe even the past couple of years. But he would just snap the ball, do this little thing, run around like an idiot, and then inexplicably go unsacked by any defender, and then just throw it, and there's Doug Baldwin with nobody within 10 yards of him. Or Jermaine Kearse, or whatever random tight end or receiver they signed off the practice squad that week. They just have all of these no-name players. Nick Vannett has never been a player again. Malik Taylor, is that a name? They have a Freddie Swain that got an end zone target this past Sunday against the Bills. I don't mean to go off on that separate tangent. They just seem to always have a bunch of no-namers. Chris Matthews in the Super Bowl. David Moore. These are guys you'll probably never hear from ever again once they're outside of a Seahawk uniform. But they have nice games for them. Paul Richardson. They all just keep coming back to me. Anyway, it really doesn't have so much to do with how he plays on the field. I just wanted to point that out. Okay? What it has to do with is his phony persona. He's so fake. Like, I can barely even stand listening to him. I look at him and then listen to the words that come out of his mouth, and he just has this so, like, if you ever hear him mic'd up, he's like, let's go, gentlemen, believe, I love you guys, believe, believe, believe. And you want your guy to be a good leader, of course, especially at quarterback, but it just seems so disingenuous, just fake, just a facade, all for the cameras or for the microphone. It gets in all those post-game interviews, and he's like, well, we got a great group of guys. He just slaps everyone's butts. Thanks God, the Seahawk-loving football fan, and says, go Hawks, at the end of it. And his stupid Mr. Unlimited video. You can see it on my face. I'm just seething. I cannot stand the guy. Whew. I could probably keep going, but I'm going to stop right there for the sake of the 15-minute time window that I usually allot myself for these videos. Okay? Moving on. Hit me up on Twitter, whatever. My Twitter handle and YouTube username are the same. Usually say that at the end, but let's say it right here. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in the comments. Let's talk about it on Twitter. I'll be happy to go on about why I dislike Russell Wilson. Anyway, he finally loses to the Bills. Granted, it's only his, I believe, third career start against the Bills. Is that correct? Yeah, 2012, 2016, Monday Night Football, and yes, 2020, of course. Every 4 years, duh, that makes sense. So the Bills finally beat him, 44-34. And one thing that I said at the end of my video last week as I was wrapping it up was basically just that I want to throw the ball all the time. I want to be so good at throwing the football that it surprises teams when you run the football. And that is finally what I got on Sunday against the Seahawks. The Bills attempted 28 passes in the first half against 3 runs. Josh Allen had 280 some odd passing yards in the first half. If the game stays a lot closer than what it ended up being, Josh Allen has a shot at 500 passing yards. He goes for 415, and what did he finish with? 3 touchdowns, I believe it was. Checking now. 31 of 38, 415, and 3 touchdowns. Also added one with his legs. So 4 total touchdowns. just an outstanding showing. And they did that without completing a touchdown to Diggs, Brown, or Beasley. Gabe Davis has one, Tyler Kroft has one, and Isaiah McKenzie has another. Like, the Bills they're getting contributions. They had 7 different players. They're getting contributions from everywhere. They had 7 different players have at least a 20-yard reception, a 20-yard play. Meanwhile, Zach Moss leads them in rushing with 9 carries for 18 yards. Josh Allen has 14. Devin Singletary, 2 carries for 1 yard. What did I talk about last week? You just stay in close games if you want to run the football all day. And some teams are very good at running the football, like Minnesota. Minnesota has to run the football in order to be competitive. That's their best player. That's their best option. It is not the Bills' best option. They have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, John Brown, and a bunch of other weapons like Gabe Davis that they can incorporate into the passing game and make it really difficult for teams to stop them. Granted, Seattle was a little handicapped on defense. They have a very bad defense to begin with. Shaquille Griffin is out. That doesn't help them. Quentin Dunbar plays injured. But I'm not sure how much of a difference it would have made if Dunbar was healthy and Griffin was in the game. Some Seahawks fan will probably tell me that it would have made a difference, especially getting Carlos Dunlap and Jamal Adams in there wreaking havoc and getting a couple of sacks. Sure, whatever. The Bills hit a couple timely screens against that. You want to blitz us all day? Fine. We're unfazed, unaffected. We're just going to keep throwing. Just keep throwing as long as it's working. Right? Like I said, I know I already mentioned this once. I'm going to mention it again. If you want to hand the ball off all day, and the Bills have done that against Seattle and, or not against Seattle, against Kansas City, and last week against New England. And where did it get them? Beat and almost beat. And I know that like the weather plays a factor into that sometimes, and I really hope the Bills don't turn into that. Turn into this type of team that's like, well, we know it's going to get cold in Buffalo, so we're going to need those contributions at some point. We're going to need to know how to run the ball. Maybe if you want to just say that as kind of a smokescreen, that's fine by me. But there is no reason that the Bills should ever believe that they need to stop throwing the ball unless they get into like a 2017 Indianapolis type of snowstorm, because they're so good at throwing the ball. And I think defensively, most fans would have taken this performance. 34 points? I'm not sure, but you had to kind of think they were going to get to 34, that Seattle was. It was, what was it, 27-17 I think it was at one point. And I remember looking at my buddy to the left, I'm like, Seattle's finishing with 34 points. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here. I'm just saying, like, it was so obvious that Seattle was going to get their points. It was 27-17. I looked at my buddy, who also hates Russell Wilson, and I'm like, Seattle's finishing with 34. It's just a matter of what the Bills are going to finish with. They have to put up enough points to, just anticipate Seattle's going to end up with 34 here. And lo and behold, that does happen. Seattle finishes with 34. The Bills, much to their credit, finish with 44. What was the difference? 4 turnovers, I would say. We talked about how Seattle had come in with something like 14 turnovers in 9 games or something like that, including, or in 7 games, including 9 interceptions is what I meant to say. And they get none, and the Bills get 4. The Bills turn 4 turnovers into, I guess, technically 16 points. The Poyer interception in the end zone, even if he drops it, it's a turnover on downs because it was forced down. Then they have to go the length of the field, so technically it counts. I'm going to count 13 points. But technically it's 16, I guess, so I should just leave it at that. 16 points off turnovers, and the Bills, with 4 minutes to go in the game, there they are, up 17 points. And that's really the only time that there was garbage time in this game. There was no garbage time. People are like, okay, DK Metcalf, that touchdown was garbage. That's it. Because it was 27-20, and Josh Allen got sacked on 3rd down, was bailed out by a Jamal Adams illegal contact penalty. That's a little lucky. That penalty doesn't have to get called, but it does get called. If it doesn't, you're certainly punting the football back to Seattle, who is then subsequently probably going to drive down the field and tie the game, because you really haven't shown much of a propensity to stop them other than them fumbling the football or throwing it to you. So that's my point. Like, this game was a fun game to watch, obviously, as a Bills fan. A fun game to win because a Super Bowl contender came into your building. We got to watch them hand it to a Super Bowl contender. It was a game all the way, like I said, but the Bills come out on top. I have gone a little bit longer than I would have liked to on Seattle because I do want to talk, obviously, about Arizona this week. Arizona has been They're first in the league in total yards. They're sixth in points for. Offensively, they are stout. The only team that's really had any type of answer for them is Carolina. For some reason, Arizona just didn't have it against Carolina. They lost 31-21. Kyler Murray only had 133 passing yards that day. Every other game they've had at least 400 yards, with the exception of Detroit, which is a game that they've also lost. So in games that they've gone over 400 yards, they are 5-1, and they're 0-2 when they are under 400 yards. Well, maybe that's something, that those aren't necessarily telling statistics, I guess, because obviously you're probably not in a better position to win if you're not getting as many yards. But whatever, I don't mean to digress. Kyler Murray is outstanding. The little Sonic the Hedgehog guy just running around, his legs are turning like crazy. On pace. I know they're 5-3. So he has 24 total touchdowns. So he's on pace for 48 touchdowns. And he has 2,000 yards passing, so he's on pace to go for 4,000 and over 1,000 rushing. So he is, again, on pace. I say on pace because you never know what's going to happen. The league is too unpredictable. But if he extrapolates his 8-game performance to 16, he has 5,000 total yards and 48 total touchdowns. He has a couple of great weapons in DeAndre Hopkins, and Christian Kirk has turned into a real nice weapon for him. Just 23 catches, but 17 yards per catch and 6 touchdowns. He leads them in receiving touchdowns. Larry Fitzgerald is still there. Salute the GOAT. Definitely not anywhere near the same player he used to be. Hasn't scored yet this year. Way more of an underneath type of threat. 33 catches for 261. Just an average of 8 yards per reception. But a nice option to have. A reliable option for your young quarterback to have. We still aren't sure if Kenyon Drake is going to be back. He is back into practice a little bit. So he might be. But they have a nice 1-2 punch there with Drake and Chase Edmonds. Drake started the season a little bit slow. He's still averaging over 4 yards a carry. I think if you have him as a fantasy player, which I do in one league, you've been very frustrated with his performance for the most part. And maybe the Cardinals fans have too. Maybe you can shed a little light on that for me. I'm not looking at this game and really concerning. I guess it's concerning, but what's the point? The Bills. It might be the same way as Seattle. I basically what I was going to say is the Bills are going to win this game with strong defense. No, probably not. They're going to have to win it with strong offense again. I don't know if we're going to get to 44-34 exactly, but you might get in that ballpark. Arizona defensively, decent. They have a really good player in Budda Baker. They've been pretty good actually in terms of scoring. They have a very good point differential. I believe they're 8th in points allowed. However, against the run, they're 22nd. Against the pass, they're 19th. So in terms of yardage, they're just 19th. But they're not really allowing a ton of points. Some of that came against the Jets. Some of that came against the Cowboys. Some of that came against Dwayne Haskins. So that's there. They've allowed 34 each of the past 2 weeks to Miami and Seattle. So I think they're suspect on defense. I think they are weak at middle linebacker. I don't think Jordan Hicks has been nearly as good as he was for them last year. Devondre Campbell, they brought him on a 1-year deal. And just play Isaiah Simmons. Just find out what you have with Isaiah Simmons. For the first time last week against Miami, he played more than half of the defensive snaps. You drafted him in the top 10. He is an athletic freak. Just make him fit, or at least try him and see if he fits. All right. Hassan Reddick, some people might have thought was going to be a bit of a bust, but he leads them in sacks this year. Excuse me. Chandler Jones was certainly a pretty big loss for them because he has been one of the more underappreciated players really in the league, especially as in terms of a pass rusher. But they say they're optimistic about Budda Baker playing. That would be very positive for them. Jordan Phillips, familiar face there for Bills fans. He is probably going to be questionable as well. I assume Baker will be questionable. Excuse me. Apparently I need some water. I'm just going to get down to my prediction. As we cap this off here, the Bills aren't going to go 14-2, guys. They're just simply not going to go 14-2. And this seems like the type of game, flying cross country, that they might lose. So I'm going to pick Arizona to beat the Bills 30-27. Let's just put it on that. The Bills probably aren't going 13-3. Maybe they end up at 12-4. That's very nice. But they're still going to lose 2 more games down the road. if that is their final record. But hit me up on Twitter. Twitter handle, YouTube username are the same. As always, above all else, go Bills.